Thank you so much for being with us today. So we have decided to split this webinar in two main sessions. First one would be 20 minutes long. We will go through the presentation, and then we will allow 20 minutes of question session. Don't hesitate to ask questions in the chat room during our presentation. We have our angel, Joss, of the day. Thank you, Joss.
Hi, everyone.
So Joss will collect your questions during the presentation, and we will be happy to answer them afterwards. So let's start.
So we are going to introduce the solutions we can do between Hiphen and Planet for field monitoring in agriculture situations. Comment est-ce qu'on...
La molette. Non?
Yep. Comment tu fais du coup?
Okay.
Yes, slide 2. So,
and then, yeah, I will introduce myself. I'm Rachel Mayer. I am a sales lead at Planet Labs, and I'm happy now to present this webinar with Alexis from Hiphen.
Hello, so my name is Alexis. I founded Hiphen 5 years ago, and today I lead the structure that is 12 employees big, based in Avignon, in UMT Capt, which envelopes INRA and Arvalis.
So, in a nutshell, the main 4 steps of this presentation. So first of all, I will introduce Planet constellations, our satellite imagery, and how we can support Hiphen solutions. And we will go through 3 business cases, helping either plant breeders or predict yield, or even support crop management tools. Please stay with us during this presentation. We have an important announcement to make at the end. So bear with us, ask questions, and don't hesitate to interact afterwards.
So, to start, today Planet and Hiphen will discuss to you about what we can do in agriculture.
Yeah.
And maybe you can start introducing Planet, dear Rachel.
Yes, thank you. So Planet started its beautiful story back in 2010. And as you could expect from a startup, innovative startup, Planet was founded in a garage in California by several ex-NASA scientists. And back then they had the willingness to make space help life on Earth by providing insights at the speed of change. So the first mission of Planet, which has been announced by one of our founders, Will Marshall, in 2014, was to image the entire Earth almost every day, and it has been announced during a TED speech. To achieve this mission, we have launched more than 350 satellites from 7 countries during these past 9 years. And these Dove satellites composing the PlanetScope constellation, enabling us now to provide more than 900 images archive on a given location, thanks to a download of more than 6 terabytes downlinking to our ground stations. We had, of course, several launches to achieve this mission. And we acquired 2 satellite constellations, RapidEye in 2015, and Terabella company, which is SkySat's constellation, in 2017. We have been proud to announce in 2017 that the mission 1 has been complete. We are now able to provide 1 picture almost every day over the entire landmass. Looking forward now, in 2018, Will Marshall, during another TED speech, was willing to have another vision about queryable Earth, and this has been announced during the TED. Going back to the 3 constellations we have, as I mentioned, RapidEye, which has 5 satellites, PlanetScope is the most important fleet with more than 120 satellites in orbit, and SkySat, which is a very high resolution constellation, enabling to have a zoom about the change identified. So the way we want to provide a solution with our different constellation is to identify the change with daily acquisitions from PlanetScope. So let's say I see a change here, and I qualify the change with SkySat. What is important to see on this chart here is that the cadence is as important as the resolution. And this is why we now can provide both potential solutions, cadence and resolution, with PlanetScope, and most importantly as well with SkySat. In this chart as well, you can see, of course, the traditional satellites used for agricultural purposes, Landsat and Sentinel-2. So the goal and the messaging here is to mention that we believe that we can complement these already existing constellations with more cadence, providing actually more reliability in the acquisition of data. That's thanks to the cadence, you can be sure that you have information either on a daily basis and, of course, furthermore, on a weekly basis. And this slide is actually putting all together, let's say, the best compromise that you can find with our two constellations. First of all, having highly frequent 3 meters resolution data with PlanetScope, and have, of course, up to a sub-daily frequency, SkySat acquisition up to 1 meter. And this, of course, can be a bit more expensive, of course, 1 meter resolution compared to 3 meters. But then, thanks to this free constellation, including Sentinel, because we believe we can complement this already existing solution, that you can have the best compromise, either getting highly frequent and highly accurate and resolution imagery, or let's say a less frequent and less expensive solution, either from PlanetScope or Sentinel-2. We believe this solution has to be accessible easily through our platform that you can have a look here, and then you can filter down actually according to the sensor you want to have a look at. So we have incorporated Sentinel-2 to make sure that you would still work with the same environment, and then you can get access to PlanetScope as well as to SkySat specific tasking acquisitions.
So now let's try to look at the type of business cases and solutions we can use for agriculture. So the way we were going to try to describe all that is first to make a descriptive use cases. This is what we're going to speak about: breeding trails and breeders. How can I assess the quality of my trails? Then we will look at some predictive use cases. I think the best use cases we can try to focus on is yield forecast. And finally, a prescriptive use case. So once you're able to describe and predict, well, you can try to act on the prediction, and that's crop management. So the basic idea here is to give you a flavor of what we can do with Planet data and Hiphen analytics. Of course, we're not going to solve all of it, but don't hesitate to ask questions to Joss. That will be more than happy to ask those questions during the question session.
Okay, so then, of course, as you may know, satellite imagery can support the overall value chain of the agricultural sector. And we have decided to pick business cases according to the potential solution. So we will go through the first one, breeding trials.
So, what is exactly a breeding trail? I mean, breeding or not breeding, actually, any kind of trails for inputs or for cultivar selections. Well, it's a quantity of small microplots a few square meters wide that you need to detect and assess and look at the differences. So here we have an example of a trail that is based in south of France, where you can see in Sentinel-2 the fields but you have no idea if you have trails or not inside. With PlanetScope, you have a more detailed vision of a field, but you still don't see the fact that there's trails. And in SkySat, you can see the trails. So maybe that's not that clear on these images. That's why we'll go on next slide where it's much more clear. And so SkySat normally have a 70 centimeter resolution. Of course, depending on geometry of acquisition, it can go up to 1 meter, but this is still enough to have some pure pixels per microplot, which means that we're able today to be able to extract some pure pixel of your microplots when it's 2 meters by 10 meters wide, which is big microplots. Most of the breeders have 2 by 5, but this is still okay with today's resolution of SkySat. Please note that Planet announced, I think, last week or 2 weeks ago, that SkySat resolution will increase by mid 2020. So, I mean, I really think it's a use case that worth looking at. So, what we did is we compared that with some data acquired with PhenoMobile. PhenoMobile or data from INRA and Arvalis that acquires data on the microplots. Here was images where we transform in F covers, so fraction of curvature for image segmentations. And we looked at the comparison with what we have from SkySat. So what we see basically is that the trends are current. Of course, the value are different. So we try to go a little bit further there by looking at, can we split my trails, my microplots, with which one is the best and which one is the worst, the same way. And that's where we see it here. Of course, you have a lot of discrepancy. Discrepancy is mainly linked to the fact that we need to make proof of concepts with you. We need to work on calibration on SkySat, on calibration on the traits on which you want to have. But very roughly, when we compare SkySat and DVA ranking with F-cover from PhenoMobile, well, 70% of the 25 best microplots are the same for both, which means that we are having a meaningful information here for a fraction of the costs of what a PhenoMobile or a UAV would cost. And that's really, I think, the key home message to take here. Of course, I do not think that this means it's the end of PhenoMobiles and satellites. And that's really what we're trying to summarize in this slide is what are the traits we're able to have with satellites that are achievable. Well, that's more or less senescence or stay greens, maybe also F cover, so all what is the implementation of the crops and the quantity of biomass that grows at the beginning, and probably as well chlorophyll content. When we want to go into plant counting, organs counting, phenology, and all that, I think that drones and phenomobiles have still a bright future. So the way I would look at satellites, it brings a great low-cost solutions that is really actionable, especially when you don't want to go often into your fields and that you have a big number of microplots that are far away and hardly reachable.
Okay, thank you, Alexis. Thank you very much for this first business case. So now that we have, let's say, high quality and be able to prioritize the monitoring of seeds, what about yield prediction then?
So, first thing is when we go into yield prediction, we're going to change our constellation. I do not believe we need that much resolution anymore as we are at the field level and not anymore at the microplots level. So we will focus on Sentinel-2 and PlanetScope constellations, which I do believe are extremely complementary. Before understanding how we can use those remote sensing information for yield prediction, let's first see how we envision yield prediction at Hiphen. So at Hiphen, basically, we do believe that yield is being built by the limiting factor that the plant is experimenting. So for that, you need to make basic modeling on your crops. This basic modeling enables you to have a lot of explaining factors. And depending on the conditions where you are and the places, because the limiting factor are not the same in France as in California or in Zimbabwe or maybe Mexico, as I've seen that's all the people we have here, um, yield prediction can be a little bit tricky from one place to the other. If we think of it for wheat, there's two ways of seeing yield. It can be the amount of accumulated biomass, thanks to light interception, using water, nitrogen, and all that, times the harvest index. So the harvest index is the capacity of a plant to transform this biomass into yield, into what you want to harvest. So it can be grain in the case of wheat, it can be sugar in the case of sugar beet or sugar cane, etc. It can also be seen in another way. Yield is the number of ears in case of yield, but the ears have a certain number of grains, and those grains need to be filled. So you need to have 1,000 grains weight, so the weight of those grains. And that's how you can try also to assess yield. So once you understood that, the question is then to try to split this information. By example, let's take the first formula, the accumulated biomass. Well, the accumulated biomass is very linked to the amount of light that is intercepted, and thus to the amount of leaf or a fraction of intercepted PAR being photosynthetically active radiation, that is very linked to NDVI, which we're able to detect through Sentinel-2 or PlanetScope constellations. Harvest index is very linked to the capacity, so to the amount of years that are going to, grains actually, and wheat that are going to be made. And generally, we know that there is, that the number of years is being built at tillering phase, as well as growth phase after tillering, where some of the tiller will die, they don't have enough light and nitrogen to be able to survive. So this way, by having those information of biomass, of NDVI at all those strategical time, we are able to try to have all those factors, with some of them that will be in your year the limiting factor. And because we're doing that for many years, and that we're learning through machine learning algorithm on those limiting factors, all what we need, we're able to predict yield. So once we said that, how could Planet help us there compared to Sentinel-2? Well, the first thing is I really think that Sentinel-2 needs to be the backbone of all yield prediction models. This being said, you can have for few weeks, even months, no data because of clouds, because of any reasons, as you have a repetition that is much lower. And Planet will enable you to fill the gaps. In this illustration, actually in south of France, so in a place where normally there's not too much clouds, well, we have only 27 acquisitions of Sentinel-2 compared to 120 acquisitions of Planet. And if during the limiting experiences of crop you don't have data, this can be extremely damaging for your crop predictions. The other reason is the granularity. So here is the same field that you can see on Sentinel-2 and PlanetScope. Bad luck for us, it's water stress, and water stress doesn't need to have that much granularity. However, you can see the granularity, and you can imagine and envision a lot of diseases like nematodes or some fungal diseases that are having small granularity, on which when you have a 9-meter square pixel, you can start to detect it and to be able to say more or less what it is, whereas when you have a 100-meter square pixel like in Sentinel-2, you cannot. So once again, this might help you identify more limiting factors and to be able to penalize your yield better. So that's basically the flavor I can give you about yield prediction. I really think that your use case in your situation for your company needs to be explored and able to go further and discover more about this issue.
Thank you, Alexis. That was very clear. I understood everything.
But you are almost an agronomist.
Oh, yeah, thanks to you. So now, how about crop management? How to make sure that you can have potentially the best yield with the lowest possible inputs?
So crop management is really a prescriptive idea. So Once you're able to predict the amount of yield, well, you can try to actionate this prediction by playing on some limiting factors. By example, if it's disease, by putting some fungicide or some pesticides, etc. First thing I would like to mention, and that is really, really important to keep into mind, crop management is not about remote sensing at the first level. Remote sensing will give you some insight of what is happening to your field to make better decisions. But those decisions will not be made through satellites. I mean, it really depends of the weather forecast, of the cost of the inputs, of the cost of what you will sell, and also on the legislation you're having in your country, etc. We help you giving you insight on what is important for you to manage. The example that I will use today is nitrogen fertilization. Why nitrogen fertilization? Because there's already a lot of tools existing here, and that's where we have the most bibliography. Of course, if you're interested about other type of management, please write in the chat, and I'll be happy to discuss that with you afterwards. So for nitrogen fertilization, basically, I think the most sensitive way to use it is using crop models. I mean, we can quote the CHN model from Marvalis, the APSIM model from I think it's CSIRO and made in Australia. Uh, I think it's a whole webinar or maybe more with some expert on the topic to be able to really understand that. So I will try to use a method that is a little bit easier, like the enriched strip. So it's a kind of simplified model, let's say. Of course, I apologize for all the other models that I haven't cited today that you probably use day to day. They are probably very relevant. So please apologize me for trying to summarize it. So when you think about the enriched strip, what is exactly the enriched strip? So the enriched strip is when you make a strip, so a quantity of your, so you have a field, and for a quantity of this field, you will put too much nitrogen or too much of the input you want to put, and you will see how the rest of the field is reacting where you know that you didn't put enough of this. So basically, to understand it well, if you have no biomass that grows, that means that you have no um, plants, so you don't need to put more nitrogen. If it's the same color, so if you have as much biomass as you had in your enriched strip, it means that actually nitrogen is not the limiting factor, so you don't need to put more. And if it's in between, so if you have biomass but not as much as the enriched strip, it means that probably nitrogen is a limiting factor for that, and you should put nitrogen. How much? How much is a very complex topic, so it can be computed. You need to know basically what is the targeted yield, and then you have a lot of formulation. I gave you, to be completely fair, a publication here from United States, from Oklahoma State University, so really out of what we're doing at Hiphen, which gives you some examples of rules. We can use others. Don't hesitate to ask questions as well. But I really would like you to understand the philosophy is the enriched strip. And how could planet constellation compared to Sentinel-2 work? Well, because you have more granularity, your enriched strip can be smaller. You can put more very small enriched strip all around your field. And so to be able to have a better sampling and the diversity of your field, etc. So really, I really think it complements Sentinel-2 on some specific applications there. So here, for the dynamic is really this example where you see the NDVI, which is, let's say, linked to biomass at the first level, compared to the enriched strip to the rest of the field in average. And we can see that actually, well, we put nitrogen early to make sure that you're having nitrogen that is not the limiting factors. And the other case, nitrogen was the limiting factor. And we were able to put a correct amount of nitrogen to be able to have a grain filling that goes without a nitrogen limitation. This works, of course, if you do not want to make the maximum yield possible by your wheat, which I think was 16 tons in New Zealand a couple of years ago. So if your yield target in the field where you are is of 7-8 tons, like in France, such methods can work.
Thank you very much, Alexis. I understood again everything. Thank you for that. So now it's your turn. Where do you believe that our satellite imagery or Hiphen solutions can support other business cases? And do you have questions about the current presentation? And then I am going to ask Joss, our angel of the day.
So I noted down a few questions that the participants have been asking. So the first one I'd like you to answer is a question from Eric, who's asking if we are using something like a pro-sale model in our yield prediction.
Pro-sale model, maybe for people that don't know, pro-sale is the contraction of prospect and sale. Prospect is a model that links the radiometry of the leaves to the chlorophyll content of the leaves. Sale is a model that links the radiometry of the canopy to the quantity of leaves you're having in your canopy. And then with both, by using inversion methods, you can, through satellites data, recover LAI and chlorophyll. So the answer is yes, we have a pipeline that works extremely well with Sentinel-2 to recover LAI and chlorophyll. We're currently adapting it to Planet results. So this is really things that we're extremely excited to work in the coming month. And I think it's extremely relevant to use in yield prediction, and that's really what we're planning to do for 2020. Voilà.
We've got a question from Francois asking how Planet performs over cloudy regions. So can you explain a bit about that?
So thank you for the question. That's, let's say, the best business case that where we can demonstrate actually the power of cadence, meaning that considering that we have a near daily acquisition from PlanetScope constellation, of course you can easily answer the question by saying that the more you try, the best success you can expect. And this is exactly the kind of strategy we apply. We try every day. So then, of course, trying every day allows us to have at least an acquisition every 3 days, mostly on cloudy areas. That's to go back on the slide where Alexis was mentioning that we had much more images than Sentinel-2. Yeah, we have assessed that in cloudy areas as well. And usually it's 4 to 5 times more acquisition than Sentinel usually.
Yeah, so basically we don't make miracles, but indeed in cloudy area, using Planet can help you fill gaps from Sentinel-2. And I do think that a solution just with Sentinel-2 and not actioning the power of Planet is quite risky some years. So some years it will go well, and some years you will have problems.
Thank you. The next question, we ask like what, if we can access SkySat data for research purposes.
That's a good question. Yes, we have a program with ESA, which is called HIFhen, and through this program, which can be easily accessible via Google search, you can ask for the approval from ESA for the project, and then you can get access to some SkySat data.
And we also have questions asking if there was not for research, but a trial version or some way to check the data.
So then don't go to ESA, contact us, and then we can grant you that.
Okay, thank you. We have a participant asking if we take into account during the yield prediction analysis the weed cover in the field.
Good question. So today, to tell the truth, we haven't identified that as the limiting factor in the few use cases we're working on. So the answer is no. I do believe that weed is actually sometimes, especially with glyphosate, will disappear maybe because of political reasons, more and more limiting factor. I'm not sure whether it's going to be through satellites or through visual observation, by example, with a smartphone that you make, and kind of mixed or combined model we're going to use. But we're more than happy to work that with you. Um, yeah, I really think that weed is a very, very complex topic, as you have different types of weed, as they can very generally come at emergence at the beginning of the crop. But yeah, I really think it needs to be explored use case by use case.
Thank you. We've got Zihan asking if, so when we are on Planet Explorer, we can see that there are more than one image for PlanetScope on a particular day. So how do we know which image to use, or if there is a way, so if we want to work on a time series analysis, I don't know if you have an answer for that, or if you want to come back to them. Or...
Yeah, I guess I would need to come back to that question, because normally we have one publication a day. That's what I'm used to see usually. So, but normally our imagery comes with metadata, and we have the date and the hour of acquisition. So that could help potentially to answer this question in case you have Planet Explorer access.
So I think we already faced this situation at Hiphen at one stage, and the idea is it's all about BRDF, so bidirectional reflectance function. And what you want is you don't want to have an angular view of a satellite that is too low, because then your pixels are wider. And you don't want to have a hotspot issue, so you don't want that the orientation of your satellite is exactly on the orientation of the sun. So basically, I mean, don't hesitate to write to us if you need some advice. I think there's some few basic rules to select the best image from planets, and this we can help you on that quite easily.
Thank you. We've got one participant asking if we take into account canopy architecture differences in our biomass estimation.
So architecture, this is a very good question. This is a hot research topic. So on ProSail, it's just what we call the ALA for average leaf angle. That is the architecture parameter. So you have leaf area and LAA. Of course, you can have some more semi-empirical methods that take the architecture more into account. My deep conviction is that you always need ground measurements. And actually, drones, Planet, Sentinel-2 is a way to specialize in information that you confirmed on the ground first. So basically, I mean, you really need to look at Planet as something that enables you to scale. The ground measurement that you were making yesterday will be scaled through Planet. And Planet makes things scalable because you can see all of it. But it doesn't mean that you see all of it, that you have all the information in it. You have just all the variability. And so please come to us, tell us your use case, tell us what you want to action, and we can give you ideas on how to action satellites data and satellites information for your use case. I hope this answers the questions.
So we've got a question asking if is it true that PlanetScope's new sensor has similar spectral band characteristic as Sentinel-2, and does that make combined analysis easier?
Yeah, I can confirm that. That's the goal actually of our new sensors. We wanted to make it Sentinel compatible. That's the key word in there. And I guess that potentially Alexis can say a bit more, because you have used extensively the two sensors.
Yes, so basically, from my understanding, but I don't really know what we're allowed to say or not, to make it short,
so I prepared a stick.
Planet is having a philosophy of sending new doves, so new
New sensors.
satellites, new sensors every 6 months to 1 year, with enhanced capacity each time. So the first sensors were really, I think, focused on having accurate RGB image. So that's sort of the one that we treated most, where the radiometrical problem and especially the spectral bands were quite wide. The new doves, where we have quite a lot of data, has much more thin spectral signal and are much more relevant for agricultural application. And I think that the new doves will have more wavebands and more linked to Sentinel-2. Unfortunately, I think we haven't been able to download those data yet. I don't know if it's because there's not enough doves out there
Exactly.
yet.
That's exactly the reason.
So that's probably why we don't have yet this experience. But I mean, the only thing I can, as Hiphen testimony, make testimony, is that each constellation of planets is better than the old one. So that's what is a little bit breathtaking working with them. Is at the beginning you look at the data and you say it's cool, but there's lots of limitation, and 6 months later you say it's cool and there's less limitation, and really it gives a lot of hope to always be able to solve the challenges posed by data processing satellites data, which is always a big challenge. Did I say mistakes?
No, okay. Good answer. Thank you, Alexis.
We've got a participant asking if for historical satellite data accessible through the API, how far back in time can we go for images?
Our archive started in 2016 for PlanetScope.
And where I want to enhance quality increases through time. So we didn't use data before 2018 for this reason. There is more repetition and all that. I mean, 2018, I think, is the first year where we can really work on this cadence and this quality, um, giving a really amazing insight. So we have 2 years on which to really have fun.
Cool. We've got a participant asking if we use any crop models when we look at yield forecasts.
So, Hiphen, not yet. This being said, we love crop models, and we are happy to partner with generally research centers. I mean, like I don't know, you have crop models like sticks made by INRA, like APSIM made by CSIRO, or CHN made by Arvalis. We know all of them. If they're willing to work with us and with your use case, we'll be happy to do it. We understand more or less how it works, and we can also try to stitch pieces of a crop model for the relevant factor you want to measure. It really depends on your need, and we're very happy to. I really think to answer properly this question, we need to have more insight on your business case, and if it's worth using a crop model. I mean, we would be very happy to try to partner with people that are having that. I mean, Sticks, I think, is open source. I know it's gray area. AppSim, there is a licensing, but is quite easy to have. And I think with CHN, they're also making a licensing policy. Yeah.
Cool. Well, this question had to be asked, but someone is asking about the pricing of the satellite imagery for either research or business project.
So we have several pricing models. We make a difference in between government or administration projects, as well as, of course, enterprise or commercial applications. So we have this kind of two business models. And then to answer the question on pricing, I would suggest that we discuss that then afterwards.
So the participant is asking if that depends on the number of fields and the frequency we are looking for.
Okay, so then we have a combined business model,
Okay.
meaning
So maybe I can try to give you just insight without any binding stuff. But basically, we're speaking about few dollars per kilometer squares, so few cents by hectares.
Yeah.
The acquisition. Of course, the way the price is made is complex and needs simulation. I was amazed by the way that price drops with quantity. And by example, um, uh, I mean, we're speaking about 10 to 30,000 euros to follow up breeding trails for 6 months with one acquisition per week. To give you a big scale, this is more or less the type of price we're thinking of. Of course, you can reduce it if you make a lot of trails. You can increase it when you make less, but it's quite cheap overall. Is it?
I think so, yeah.
And Rachel loves to make simulation of price.
Exactly.
So please ask
I
her.
love playing with numbers.
Good. We've got a participant asking, what is the asking if which crop species we take into account for the computation of traits like LAI or chlorophyll.
So today we're working quite recently with Planet. So we're quite used to work with French types of crops. But I think we have no limitation there. I mean, we could even work with forests or with whatever you want. Yeah. So there's no limitation. Of course, in each time, maybe the processing will be slightly different. We will need to make field validation, but we already have very robust pipelines where 90% is the same. And then, of course, we need to customize a little bit for your use case. And that's why we make a proof of concept. But please be reassured, when we make a proof of concept, we reuse 90% of things that already exists. It's just we're trying to fit it to your use case because agriculture is so vast and so diverse that you cannot say that wheat cultivation in France is the same as pineapple in Brazil. I mean, it's crazy to think that it will be the same models and all that. The physics of plants, however, is always the same. I think we're more or less on time for questions. Is there maybe a last one?
One more question. We've got a participant asking how we could use Planet Imagery for orchard, like apple or grapes.
So does Planet has some use cases in California?
I would suspect so. I would suspect so.
So us at Hiphen, we haven't looked yet there. We would be more than willing to do it. I guess, I mean, probably the things on our cards could be water management, looking at size of tree crowns. I don't know. We should discuss together, and we can honestly tell you what we can try to monitor and for which application. And so please get in touch with us if you're interested. So now maybe we can go to the last slide. So we have a small announcement to make. Is that now that we discussed so much and you want to meet us, we as Hiphen, but of course we will be happy to speak also about Planet satellites. We'll make a kind of I guess not road trip, but flight trip around the world. So we will be at Agritechnica next week, and I will be there all week. So please come, and you can also book an appointment with us to make sure that we can discuss together. For breeding issues, we will be in Chicago at Seeds Expo, and we're currently working on being at PAG, so Plant and Animal Genomes, in San Diego in January. So if you're going in any of those events, please write us and get in touch with us. You can send us a message on LinkedIn, Twitter, or if you're more old-fashioned like me, email works well as well.
Thank you so much for your attention.
And hope to see you soon. Bye bye. C'est bon?